Okay, so in this video we'll be changing out the front ball joint on this 2013 Nissan. So how to know if you have a loose ball joint: you grab your wheel from 9 and 3 o'clock and you shake. If you have any looseness, it could be your ball joint. So to make sure, you check in the back, have someone shake it for you and see which joint is moving. It's either the ball joint or the tie rod. Okay, so the first step is we're going to jack up the car, set it on jack stands and take off the wheel. These are 21mm. Okay, after that we're going to start by removing the pinch bolt here. It's a 14mm. So we're going to put a 14 wrench on this side and a 14 socket on the other. Okay, so usually the nut comes out and then the bolt stays in. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread the nut back in, and then we're just going to give it a few shots with the hammer. Okay, so there you go. So towards the end I used a wrench to hook on the face of the bolt, so you could pry it out and zip it out at the same time. Okay, now we're going to separate the ball joint from the knuckle. So what we're going to do is use a big pry bar. Yeah, we're going to pry upwards, and with a sledgehammer we're going to hit on the bottom of the control arm. Alright, so there you go, separated. Okay, now we're going to get one of the bushing bolts. It's a 22mm, but first we're going to remove some of the plastics, on top to make room, because some of the plastic covers are in the way. So we're going to remove the 2 clips up here. So there's 2 more clips down here. We're going to remove this one and this one over here, because the bolt that we're trying to get is behind there. Okay, so the bolt that we're trying to get is right here. It's a 22 on this side and a 18 on this side. It's kind of hard to see, but I do have my 18 wrench here. I don't know if you can see it moving. You would only have to take off the plastics on if you're doing the passenger side. The driver side has way more room, and it doesn't have this extra arm here, the one right there. So we'll go ahead and take it off. So once it's loose enough, you could spin the bolt right off. There you go. And then we could take out the bolt from the other side. Okay, there you go. It's out. It's a pretty long bolt, so take your time. Okay, and then now for the inner bushing right here. We're just going to loosen it, and then that should give us enough room to pivot the control arm and press the ball joint out. So these are 18. Yeah, just make sure you keep a couple of threads on the nut. And there you go. Your control arm should swing outwards and then should give us enough room to press this one out. So before we press the old ball joint out, we're just going to take off the snap ring. This one has not much left to it, so I don't even think it's a snap ring actually. I mean, it's just a ring, it's not a... But usually they'll have a snap ring. Make sure you take it out, because if you forget to take it out when you press it, it could get super stuck. So yeah, this one only had a small ring on it. So we're gonna spray some PB Blaster to help us out. So this is the ball joint kit that I'm using. It's an Astro 7897. Now we're just gonna find some adapters, one receiver cup and one cup to push it. Okay, so you're gonna want a cup to push it down, and then a cup big enough to receive it. So not too big that it passes the control arm, but big enough so it goes right under like this. Now we're gonna put our clamp. And from the top, we're gonna put our thread our push bolt in. Okay, so the setup should look like this. One cup to receive it, one cup to push it, and then your bolt that you're gonna thread on here, and then it's gonna push. So you're gonna need a 22mm socket for this, or you could just use an impact. And then we're gonna see it's gonna start moving. I'm just gonna make sure these are centered so we don't go push it out all crooked. Oh, there you go. That was pretty easy. Okay, so before we put our new one in, just make sure the hole is clean and free of rust. You could use a bit of sandpaper in here, but mine's pretty clean. And to help with the new ball joint, you could either use some rust inhibitor or some anti-seize just to help it go in. So I'm just going to use some rust inhibitor. So before we put the new one on, we're just gonna put the grease fitting and tighten it. This is a 7mm. Okay. You could go ahead, if you have a grease gun, squirt a couple in there, but usually they come greased. So if you don't have a grease gun, it's no big deal. I'm just gonna squirt a few shots in there, and we should be ready to install it. Okay, so to put the new one back in, we're gonna use the one that we had before, the receiver cup, but this time we're gonna put it on the top. And for the one that's gonna push, we're gonna get a adapter with a hole in it so it won't damage the grease fitting. So you could actually put the grease fitting after if you don't want to switch adapters, but this is going to push, and it's going to protect the grease fitting at the same time. So we're just going to hammer it a bit in place so we can start it off straight. There you go. Now we're going to set up our clamp. Okay, so here's the setup. I got one adapter because there's a hole in this one, so you want the bolt to push on something solid. This is like the receiver cup from when we pushed it out, so you want it sitting towards the outside of the control arm like this, so it won't push against the ball joint. And then our final cup here, it's the one that pushes the ball joint in place. So here we go, we're going to tighten it now. There you go. I'm just going to go a bit more until it stops moving. There you go. You'll know it's all the way in when the bolt just stops moving. So that's it. Now we're going to undo the bolt. And then we'll double check. So there you go. Just double check on the bottom that it's sitting flush all the way. Just pass your finger around. Make sure there's no gap. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put the snap ring on. To make this easier, I'm just going to take off the boot here. And with some snap ring pliers, we're going to go ahead, put it on. There you go. There's a groove that's it's gonna sit on, and you'll hear it snap. Sorry, and there you go. Now we can put the boot back on. Okay, we're gonna start with the inner bushing. We're gonna put back this 18mm nut. Now for the 22mm bolt. Okay, so the trick to put this one back on is with one hand you'll have to push upward on this bushing, and with the other hand guide this bolt in and then wiggle. Okay, now that you see it stick it from the other side, you could just hammer it in, tap it in a bit. There you go. Now we're going to put the nut back on. Now we're going to line up the ball joint. We're just going to spray some rust inhibitor first. Now we're going to tighten the 14mm bolt. Okay, now that we're all done, we're going to put the wheel back on, and then we're going to go for a drive.
So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I earned your like for this video. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. And I'll be glad to help you out. Take care.